It's Wednesday, the 9th of February 2022. Welcome to the Fast 5 by Fear and Greed, where we give you the top 5 business stories you need to know in just 5 minutes. I'm Michael Thompson, and good morning, Sean Aylmer.
Good morning, Michael.
All right, 5 stories in 5 minutes. Let's get into it. Story number 1, Sean. Prime Minister Scott Morrison has formally apologised to political staffers and others who have suffered bullying, harassment and assault in Parliament House, electorate offices and ministerial offices. Quite a big day yesterday.
Yeah, it sure was. Very emotional for many people. Mr. Morrison said exploitation, abuse and harassment had played out as traumatic and harrowing experiences for many individuals. He said harassment of staff, particularly female staff, senators and members, had been perpetuated, whereby bullying, abuse, harassment and in some cases violence had become normalised. Labor leader Anthony Albanese joined the Prime Minister and said no one deserves to feel unsafe or disrespected in National Parliament. Now, Brittany Higgins, a former coalition staffer who was allegedly raped in a minister's office, was in the public gallery to hear the apologies. She was clearly distressed. But not everyone was happy with it. Australian of the Year and a victim of abuse, Grace Tame, tweeted that the apology was a performative, last-minute Band-Aid electioneering stunt.
Okay, however you look at it, really, it was a pretty significant day. Story number 2 today, Sean, and this is going to be a challenge for you because whenever I mention bonds, I just suddenly, my eyes just glaze over a little bit. But they are really, really important, and yesterday was a pretty significant day. Why does it matter?
Yes, well, look, 10-year government bond yields in Australia jumped to 2.13% yesterday. That's their highest level since March 2020. Michael, it matters because your superannuation fund and most of pretty much everyone's superannuation funds holds bonds. Now, if you buy a bond tomorrow, you're getting a much better yield than if you bought a bond yesterday. So that change in price actually makes a difference to your final returns. The other thing about bonds, they're used to value some stocks, particularly tech stocks and healthcare stocks. So when bond yields rise, the value of some of those stocks often come back a bit. So they're really, really important, and bond yields are on the rise. That's on the back of higher inflation and the expectation of higher interest rates. It's a big deal in financial markets, and yesterday they reached their highest level in 2 years.
Okay, story number 3, Sean. Macquarie Group has traditionally been known as the millionaire's factory. I don't know if that is still its nickname, but the share price for the group jumped yesterday after it said that earnings were looking pretty good.
Maybe it should be the billionaire's factory. They were really good. In fact, it's achieved record quarterly earnings for the 3 months to December. That's on the back of better financial markets. Now, the bank didn't actually provide any numbers, but given it made a net profit of $2 billion for the half year to last September, its full year result is likely to be well over $4 billion. Macquarie is now Australia's 6th largest company, worth around $78 billion. Its share price is up by 1/3 since immediately before the pandemic. Compare that to the big 4 banks, they're all up a touch or actually down. In fact, Macquarie is now larger than ANZ on the ASX. It really has been a great success story.
Yeah, certainly has. Story number 4, this is a really interesting one, Sean, because everyone knows how the miners and energy companies are really pushing to become greener. Bit of an interesting twist because Santos has booked carbon storage capacity, which presumably it hopes is going to be valued by shareholders. How does this work?
Well, the company booked 100 million tonnes of CO2 storage resource in the Cooper Basin in South Australia as part of its annual oil and gas reserve statement, which it released yesterday. According to the Financial Review, the Society of Petroleum Engineers, which is an international organisation of oil and gas experts, has developed a system to book carbon storage capacity, hopefully putting a value on it. That capacity can be used, so the argument goes, to store greenhouse gases removed from the atmosphere via carbon capture technologies. It's not quite clear what the value of this will be to Santos. It should be able to sell Australian carbon credit units generated from the project into the federal government's emissions reduction fund. All this gets a bit confusing, I get that. But what it's saying is that we have this facility to put carbon back into the earth, and that should be valued. It's just a really interesting take on how oil and gas companies are trying to create value.
And finally, Sean, story number 5, we've saved the bad news for last, which I'm sure is a terrible strategy, but there is a crisis looming in the coffee world.
Yes, reserves of high-end Arabica beans have fallen to their lowest level since 2000, which was when monitoring began. According to Bloomberg, there's about 65 million kilos in storage, which isn't actually that much globally. Coffee reserves have been falling since September due to much higher shipping costs and poor weather conditions that's harmed production in Brazil, which of course is the world's biggest grower and exporter. Now, Australia's ranked about 40 in terms of coffee consumption, nowhere near the big guys, which are Finland, Norway, Iceland and Denmark. Much worse news up there in those Scandi countries than down here in Australia.
Yeah, it might be. We might be ranked 40, but I reckon our coffee is better than anywhere else in the world.
Absolutely. I'm with you.
Yeah, we might be a little biased, but we'll stick with that. That's it, the top 5 business stories in 5 minutes. Thank you very much, Sean.
Thank you, Michael.
It's Wednesday, the 9th of February, 2022. Remember to hit follow on the podcast, and you can find our longer daily podcast called Fear and Greed on your podcast platform. I'm Michael Thompson, and that was the Fast 5 by Fear and Greed. Have a great day.